Pacer Nation, what is going on? Welcome back to another episode here of Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden, and he is back, ladies and gentlemen, the president of the Jermaine O'Neal fan club, Michael J. Facci. Facci, welcome back to the show.
Hey, in the building. Never feels good to miss one. So
No.
It feels great to be back.
Feels weird doing it solo. It's like when you leave the house without your cell phone, you're like, man, this doesn't feel right. You know, it's like, what's going on? But I'm curious, obviously I did do a little bit of a recap of Media Day, Facci, and a lot of exciting things, got to be there for the first time, all that. But I'm curious, any takeaways from Media Day before we jump into day one of practice?
The vibe is so different. No one's dodging the question of what the goal is. This year, all the players, it feels like they are bought in to say, we're tired of losing. We want to make the playoffs. And also defense. Defense is everything right now. The Pacers know it. You can't accept being a bottom five unit. So it feels like it's coming from everybody buying in and taking pride on the defensive side of things. So I thought that those were some of the main takeaways. And then obviously things like, hey, the situation with Buddy Hield. I think it actually sounds pretty positive right now of that Buddy's bought in to his role. And I think there's not this drama hanging over the Pacers this year like there was last year when you really think about things of just like, is Myles going to be moved? What about his contract? Like, we don't have those type of real rumors going on. I think it's just a team bought into taking steps forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. With Buddy Hield, the one thing we can definitely know about Buddy is he is a basketball player, and that's all he cares about. Basketball is his first love. So yeah, the contract stuff, it's going to happen. It's part of the business. That's the other side of the NBA that fans don't love. But Buddy is valuable to this team, and the fan base probably overvalues him a little bit just in terms of his overall play. But that's okay. I mean, when you're a fan of a team and a guy does a lot of good things for you, it's okay to value him. So it was just cool to hear Buddy talk. Buddy is hilarious in person. I will say my favorite part, I'll have to send you the full-length video. I put a short clip of Buddy asking Tyrese a question while he was drinking some coffee.
Saw that. I love that. That was awesome. And it felt like, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but it just felt like when the players say that Buddy's the funniest teammate, that video right there is where you can see why.
Yeah, so what's really funny is I was kind of standing in the back a little bit, and I'm just taller, so I can reach over everybody with my phone and get my video, but all of a sudden, I look over to my left, and there's Buddy Hield, and he was probably there for about 12 to 15 seconds before he asked that question, and he kept drinking, and he was just like waiting for Tyrese to finish up. So I was like, I just videoed Buddy the whole time. I wasn't even videoing Tyrese at this point. And then that's when Buddy asked his question. But like that's just Buddy Hield. And then you got Jarris Walker joking around with TJ McConnell, Obi Toppin asking Tyrese a question. I thought that was just really cool to see how those guys were connecting in that environment and just having fun with one another, because that's what you really want to see. Is you want to see these guys getting along when they're not playing basketball, because that means that when they do play basketball, they're going to have a good time and they're going to play for one another. But I felt like today at practice, Facci, if you're ready to jump into it.
I am.
The questions have been nonstop yesterday at Media Day and today about the defense. And
nonstop.
It's to the point where I can feel like Rick Carlisle is starting to get annoyed talking about it, because in his media session today, basically he said, eventually we just got to quit talking about it and go out there and show that we got it. It's one of those things where you can say, we're going to get better defensively, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But until you go out there and just do it, it's just talk. So I think that while it is an emphasis of this team to get better defensively, I think these guys are kind of getting annoyed talking about it all the time, because there are other parts of the game that have to improve. But they did put an emphasis after the season was over that we got to get better defensively. So to be fair, they did kind of bring it on themselves for all these questions about the defense.
No, they definitely did. I mean, all offseason, the Pacers addressed defense. It's what it is. You draft Jarris Walker, you sign, you pay up for Bruce Brown to improve on the defensive side of things. Tyrese even saying earlier in the offseason, hey, I got to lead by example, the defensive end. Mathurin saying he wants to be a really good two-way player. Everybody has made that their goal. Not, I want to average 20. Not, I want to lead this team in scoring. It's about becoming a better defensive player, and I think that's where you have to start. So we've seen defense emphasized in training camp before, but not like this. It just really feels like there's going to be pride taken in, and I think it was Myles Turner was talking about it, in winning your defensive matchups, not just looking for help on the team, but like winning your matchup. And then we heard from guys. I mean, when the episode that you put out, we heard from Aaron Nesmith talking about his defensive capabilities, from Bruce Brown. I mean, these are guys that are all the way bought into specific roles. Like Bruce Brown knows, like, hey, look, I could do a lot offensively. I'm a defensive guy. I'm here to help this team defensively. And for that, I just feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm just being hopeful, but I really do feel that we're going to see an improved defensive Pacers team. How improved? That's the real question. You and I, we've been shooting all off season. Can we be middle of the pack defensively? We'd even take probably top 20 defensively, but we have to see some sort of improvement. And I love the fact that that's the common goal across the full entire team.
Yeah, and we know Jim Boylen was brought in as the as another assistant coach whenever Ronald Norwood left for the Atlanta Hawks. And it was interesting because we've heard guys talk about Jim Boylen and how he's kind of been the leader of the defense. But today, Rick Carlisle also stated that it's not just Jim Boylen doing the defensive things, it's a collective group working on it. So Jim Boylen obviously is going to get the credit because he's the leader of the defense in terms of coaching-wise. But I do remember Rick saying in the offseason, before we even got to Media Day, probably a few months ago, that they're going to rotate the coaches and not just have them be assigned to one part of the game. They're going to take turns being in charge of different things. So Jim Boylen is going to sit in the second row. He's not even going to be on the front row of the bench. He's taking Jenny Busek's spot on the back row, and Jenny got promoted to the front row on the coaching staff. So I feel like overall this team brought in some good defenders. Internal growth is how this team is going to get better defensively. And all the different cliches that you hear, playing harder, communication, that kind of stuff, that's all important too. But I think the big thing that I heard today from the guys talking is more trust on the one-on-one defense and not helping out as much help side. And I think that's a big schematic change because it felt like they're pretty much since Bjorkgren came here that everything was funneled to Myles. And while that's great for Myles' blocks numbers, like Kevin Pritchard said, a lot of blocks, that's a good thing, but it's not a great thing because it can also mean that your defense is bad on the perimeter. So if they can be held more accountable for their one-on-one defense and not rely so much on that help side, I think that's going to make the defense so much better just in that way schematically. So Myles doesn't have to be the last hope for every single offensive possession from the opposing team, because that's what it felt like at times last year.
Accountability is going to be everything. No more masking players defensively. Like, oh, well, Halliburton or Mathurin, they're a liability, so let's have someone to help them. No, they got to own their defensive assignments and get better. And I think that, Bruce Brown said it in an interview, that clip that you shared, that Mathurin has all the tools to be a really good defender. He's learning people's tendencies. Like, He's putting on some size. Like, he could be a good defender. Everybody eventually could be, but it's about getting 1% better. Not just Halliburton, Mathurin. They're not going to become all defensive players next year, maybe even ever in their career. But can they take those steps forward to being better defensively? If everybody can do that, you're going to get a group that tries really hard and buys in, and it's that hustle. It's that wanting to be a better defensive unit instead of just, hey, this guy's really good at block shots. He'll cover us. Nope. Yeah. That's not going to work. I mean, we looked at it in those Nate Bjorkgren seasons. Yeah, you talked about it. Myles loved it. Great stats. What did the team accomplish? Not much. Yeah. So they gotta fix the problem before it gets to Myles.
Totally agree with that. I think to pivot a little bit off the defense, Rick Carlisle was on the radio today. And I thought it was great because, everyone's excited for the Pacers season. Training camps here. But when he was talking with Kevin Bowen asked him, how do you determine a tiebreaker if there's guys competing for a spot in terms of who starts, who's the backup big, who's the backup 4, who's the backup 2, 3, whatever, backup point guard? How do you determine a tiebreaker if there's two guys that really brought all they had to camp and prove they belong on the court? And I thought this was a great answer from Rick. He said, well, we're going to go with the guy that gives us the best chance to win. So at the end of the day, the tiebreaker is going to be determined by who is the better player overall and who gives them the best chance to win. So that's nice to hear that it's not necessarily the veteran's going to get it, or the guy that was drafted the highest is going to get it. It's more so we're not looking. Basically, what he didn't say was we're looking long term here. We're going to give the younger guys the thing. It's like, no, whoever goes out there and gives us the best chance to win is who's going to do that. So we know it's going to be a competitive camp. All the guys, they're very aware of the situation that there are no guarantees in terms of who's starting and what. So that's going to make training camp more competitive. And that was a big talking point at media day. But we heard that day one was a very competitive practice as well. And TJ McConnell was the only one that I think didn't play out of the 18-man roster because he is dealing with an ankle injury. I was curious. I know I want to get your thoughts on what Carlisle said there, but also 21-man rosters are a thing for training camp. The Pacers only bring 18 into camp. Are you a little surprised they didn't just bring 3 extra bodies in there in case of injuries, experience, maybe get guys in the G League some experience, that kind of thing?
I'm not going to say I wasn't surprised because it's common. And we looked at the roster last year. There were some guys that were long shots.
Langston Galloway.
Langston Galloway was in there, but it came down to Langston Galloway and James Johnson for that final
Davidas
spot.
Servidis was
that was the exact name that I was looking for. I was like, all right, I know it's not Arvidas. Yeah, that was the guy that was like, what? This guy's got an invite? Like, I don't know, it's a little bit of a long shot. So and I have that roster pulled up just quickly to go through it. Look, you and I, we both loved Terry Taylor. Hey, great guy. I was happy he came on the show. Still rooting for him. But like Terry Taylor, Servidis, James Johnson, who was a huge veteran for this team and had an impact. Langston Galloway, those are guys, Goga, like this team right now that we're bringing into camp is much better than that team last year. I really do think that this Pacers roster has upgraded. Obviously, Chris Duarte was in that group as well. Yeah. So I feel like the 18 that you're bringing into camp is a solidified 18 that you're looking to build with. No spots are up for grabs in terms of roster spots. This is it. Great experience for the two ways. No reps are going to be going to players that are not going to be here. And I really like that. I think in that's probably better for the two-way guys like, Oscar and Kendall Brown, guys like Ben Shepherd. I feel like those are the guys that are probably going to benefit a little bit more from this. But I like the 18 instead of 21. Could you have brought in one guy, one veteran? That could have helped. Yeah, could have been. But I'm cool with 18.
Yeah, I would have been fine with them bringing in 3 extra people just to
doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I mean, and what if somebody pops? What if somebody's really good? You're like, we want to put them on our G League team, that kind of thing. So I think that, if you've got the opportunity to bring in 21 guys, why not? Right? Yeah. Why not let Alfred Payton, Jordan Bell stay for training camp? Why not have them on the roster at least for it? Because it's just good experience. But what were your thoughts on, also, I don't think you were able to touch on this yet, but your thoughts on how Rick Carlisle is going to view the tiebreakers?
That's great. Nothing should be handed to anybody. I really do think that when you're trying to win, you emphasize, hey, who's playing the best? Who's going to give you a chance to win that night instead of like, we heard, and it's completely different, but we heard for Houston when everything was going down with Kevin Porter Jr. that like their head coach was getting pushback from above to really play him at times when other people, in specific John Wall at the time, was playing better than Kevin Porter Jr. And that's not going to happen here. I love that. I think that our young guys are really talented. Bennedict Mathurin, Andrew Nembhard, but nothing's being handed to them. They got to earn it. And I think that is the way to really, preach that across the team of everybody's got to work for it. And competition has been probably the key word of this training camp and this offseason because it's as real as it's ever been.
Yeah, and I kind of feel bad for TJ McConnell being out with the injury because he did say yesterday in his interview, like, I'm going to have to scratch and claw like I always have and prove my worth once again. It's just like he's always got his back against the wall, it feels like, in terms of where he fits out role-wise, but he always rises above the occasion. So can't say anything bad about TJ, but we did hear today from Rick Carlisle once again that Andrew Nembhard was the primary ball handler today during practice. So it appears that Andrew is going to be the backup point guard, at least heading into the season that way. Now, it is just day one. Things could change. We'll see how things play out during the preseason, who's the starting 5, if they make any adjustments, if they try different combinations to kind of figure out what they're looking at. I would love to see that. But one thing Rick Carlisle did say at Media Day when he was talking about Tyrese Halliburton with playing with Team USA, they are going to put in some, rest days for Tyrese because it's been a long summer for him. They don't want to overwork him. They've got a game coming up, I think Saturday or Sunday. I think it's Sunday. Actually. The
Memphis
8th is the first game. Yep, on the road. So this is going to be a good time to, let McConnell, if he can get back healthy soon, let him and Nembhard kind of run different units and see how they look as the primary ball handlers. But other than those three guys, I don't really see another guy that's a point guard. Maybe you can throw Bruce Brown in there if you need to as an emergency fourth point guard. But we saw Isaiah Wong at Summer League. I don't really like him that much as a point guard.
Neither do I.
So, yeah, I think at this point right now, that's where I'm at. But I will say, shout out to your guy, your favorite player on the two-way deals, Oscar Tshiebwe. The best interview of yesterday's media. I mean, the guy was cracking me up when he said, I need to go to the weight room to get a little bit stronger because I couldn't move miles. And he said, could you also make me a little taller?
I know. Just the way he talks and everything just really made that interview. And it was awesome to hear that Myles has taken him under his wing. True. And we've heard now, like, Myles has fully embraced that veteran role. And just think about the 180 that Myles went through from last year's media day to this one. Last year, he's like coming in with the I'm only going to answer this once about these trade rumors and the contract. And that was hanging over his head. Goes out there, has a career year. Now he's coming into this training camp. He's got 2 years left on his deal now. He's embraced the veteran type role, playing really good. He's healthy.
Yeah.
He's known. I am the starting center on this team. I'm me and McConnell. We're really the vets. I think that's awesome to be able to now this training camp more than anyone just feels very different and refreshing for Myles Turner.
Do you know off the top of your head who the top 3 longest tenure Pacers are right now?
Well, obviously Myles Turner, and then TJ McConnell,
and then number 3,
and then it's got to be a huge drop off after that. Is it a tie between Tyrese and Buddy at this point?
No, there's someone that was on the roster when they got here that's still there, but it's one player.
Oh, Isaiah Jackson.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's hilarious to me.
Isaiah the vet, one of them. It's maybe not by age, but by tenure, and that's crazy because half this team has only been in the league for 4 or less seasons.
Yeah, that's a big thing here, and that's one thing me and Tony talked about. 7 of the guys that could be in the 10-man rotation more than likely have only been in the league for 4 years or less. It's just what kind of experience have they really had? And it's not a lot. So
no.
It's what you like about a young team, but it's also what can kind of keep a young team from maybe getting a few wins here in the regular season that they need is just the inexperience. But I think last year was a good stepping stone for this team to kind of get themselves figured out in terms of what style they want to play for a full year, who they have roster wise. And I think everything that happened last year kind of gave these guys a taste in their mouth. Let's get better. They want to get better. They want to make the playoffs. And like you said, that's the emphasis from the players. And Rick Carlisle, when asked about it, said, yeah, we can take a competitive step forward. That's a big thing. But I want to say it was McConnell that said, now we got a target on our back because last year we surprised people. This year we're not going to be surprising people with how we play, what we're doing. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of adjustments teams make, knowing they're going to be playing the Pacers, a team that people probably just thought, oh, yeah, they're going to be bad. They were in the lottery. They didn't make a lot of roster moves in the offseason. It's just the same team, But this year it's going to be a little bit different. They've made some good moves. I wouldn't say they've made any glass shattering moves in terms of, oh, we're going to win a championship by the guys we brought in, but they did make some moves to improve around the edges and I think get a little bit better and address some positions that needed to be addressed, like the power forward position specifically. But that's where I'm at with everything. I just feel like it's a lot of excitement from the players to make the playoffs, but the front office still never committed to saying we're a playoff team. They were very open-ended with their comments and saying, well, after the first couple months, we'll see what direction we head. So it's hard to sell the fan base that, oh, we're going to make the playoffs when your front office isn't selling that message. But at the same time, they're trying to keep it, I think, without any limitations one way or the other, because they don't want to set expectations and then fail.
And it's a great point. They are definitely trying to, cover their behinds to some degree to just say, look, whoa, hey, we want to prioritize development, but we want to take those competitive steps forward. Basically those are the words out of Carlisle's mouth, but the players, them saying it, them believing it, it's like there's just this part of me that's thinking Tyrese Halliburton doesn't care what the front office is saying. That man wants the playoffs. And I really do think that the players are going for it. And I really feel like that Bruce Brown signing, you mentioned they didn't, shatter the glass or anything. I just feel like it changed the vibe, the mentality of this team. You brought in a champion who is known, his calling card is defense. And I do think that that's going to be something that he's going to be able to help and have, be contagious amongst his teammates. So I think that's something that's really going to change, the vibe. And then also, we didn't really get to talk about, how, the starting five. The starting five for today was Tyrese Halliburton, Bruce Brown, Bennedict Mathurin, Obi Toppin, and Myles Turner. Alex, what were your thoughts on that five? I think a lot of us assumed that would be the five to start. Maybe it changes later on, but what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense based on how the roster is currently constructed. And while I am a big Andrew Nembhard fan, and I think that he didn't, I know you are too. I just probably have been a little bit more of an advocate for him starting than anybody else on this podcast. Even the guests that we've had on, I've been like, well, I could see why Nembhard should start. But I know Rick loves him. I know that I really like his defensive presence. And one of the things about Drew, he's a pretty quiet guy, media session, he was not interviewed for very long. And he's just an under the radar guy, kind of a little bit underappreciated, I think, just in general by maybe people that cover, maybe the fan base. Cause I think he's got a lot of good basketball in him, the things that he can do. So we'll see what happens. I mean, obviously him being the backup point guard, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to play a lot of minutes. And I think that you probably even will see him at times closing out games with different lineup combinations. I don't think that the starting five means anything about, who is going to close out games. But you brought up a great point, talking about the starting five, things we didn't talk about. Well, in Myles Turner's interview today, they asked him about Bruce Brown, and he said, I love Bruce. He reminds me of Thad.
Yeah, I did see that quote.
Yeah, he can play 1 through 4. And I'm thinking, okay, so if we close a game out with Tyrese, Nembhard, Mathurin, Bruce Brown, and Myles, it's a little small, but Bruce has guarded 4s before. I don't have any problem with that. I mean, the league has totally changed where 4s are not your Charles Barkley type 4s, right? They're more of the outside perimeter 4s where maybe he could be a little bit of a good defender against those guys. So, I mean, that's not the ideal situation, obviously, but there's times where you could do a lineup like that. I think that's interesting. But overall, I just felt like that's the starting five that makes the most sense. We did not get clarification on who was running with the second unit. I did hear Jarris Walker say that he had a 5 that was him, Ben Shepherd, Jordan Mora, Andrew Nembhard, and Daniel Tice. So that means that the other combination was Jalen, Isaiah, Nesmith, Buddy, Isaiah Wong, Oscar Tshiebwe, Kendall Brown. So it's kind of okay, how did they go about pairing all these guys up? But at least we know that the starting 5 that was put out there was the 5 we expected. And I think that's a good 5. I think it kind of makes sense in terms of everything they bring to the table offensively and defensively, what you're looking for. But Mathurin, Tyrese, and Obi are really going to have to take a step forward defensively to really showcase that, all right, we can be more defensive presence out here than we were last year.
No doubt about it. I mean, everybody does, but those 3 in specific, they have their work cut out for them. Also, on a side note, I love just hearing Obi just embracing, we're going to be Lob City. It's whoa, wait a minute. Whoa. A couple years ago, we had nothing even remotely like this. And it's over the last few years, it's been fun to see the Pacers just get more athletic. And it really feels that this is the year that we're going to be must-watch TV for your diehard NBA fans. It's going to take a while to get the casuals on board to really see that, hey, look at the Pacers. They're really doing something. But I don't know. This year feels like the start of something special. You can make an argument that was last year the start. I don't know. I feel like it was a kind of figuring out some things. This feels like, it's not like OKC when they had Durant and young James Harden and Russ, but okay, we just got to make the playoffs and then consistently year after year, maybe build on it one round at a time And this just feels like the groundwork has been laid now to take that first step. This was like last year's plan to, pouring out the cement. I'm ready to take a step on that staircase towards, the playoffs and above.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't make the playoffs, I think while we talked about some season goals this year and if we would be disappointed if they didn't make the playoffs, I think if everyone's healthy, it will probably be a little bit of a disappointment if they do not make the playoffs because, these guys are saying they shouldn't be there. I kind of agree with them. I think that there are some teams that maybe took a step back, like a Toronto, like a Chicago. I mean, if you're hearing the stuff coming out of Toronto on media day, my goodness, that just seems, Masai Ujiri would be fired if he had never won a championship with Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
The moves that he's made pretty much have been so, terrible, in my opinion. And, I'm just going to say it. I think that the trade for Kawhi was so risky because you traded a Toronto legend in DeMar DeRozan. It worked out because you won it fair and square, no doubt about it. But they also got a little lucky going up against that Philadelphia team that was tough with Jimmy Butler there. That team, that shot that Kawhi made was just incredible. But you talk about the injuries to Golden State too. Like if they don't win a title, Kawhi doesn't come back. That's a trade that you look back on and go, why did we do that for that run, that 1 year? But they won the title, so he's getting a little bit of a pass. But the way he's handled everything, the comments he made about Pascal Siakam being selfish, that's kind of how it was.
Not good.
No, he put that out there basically saying, we got to be less selfish. And then when their coach came in there and said something, he was like, well, if you're getting double teamed, you probably should pass the ball. It's like, man, everything that they're saying right now, I don't care if the context is, not correct with how I'm reading it, but it just feels like they're just not locked in. And then we found out today, OG Anunoby is not going to sign an extension with them. He wants to test free agency. So there are two big chips right there that they would not trade anything for, could be on the move, and this team could be in a complete rebuild mode by the middle of January. So Toronto, man, Masai Ujiri, that I don't think is a good GM. I'm just going to be honest.
A couple of years ago, the hottest name in town, that dude peaked. And I just feel like right now people are getting ready to call his bluff because apparently he was going after Dame without trying to include OG or Siakam. I just don't understand what that
Scotty
offer
Barnes
looked like. Exactly. What is this offer looking like? Obviously, Grady Dick was the name that we were hearing, but there's got to be a lot more if you're going after Dame. So give it some time. We're going to finally see. They're not going to ride this out. If OG's saying I'm not going to sign an extension, I will test free agency. I just don't think that they could take that risk because this is a pivotal offseason for them. They had been a team that, obviously, you mentioned they got it done, but then they had a window of some, pretty good talent there that they didn't do anything with. Yeah. And I think at this point, give it about, come January or so, I think they're going to have to blow it up.
Yeah, Kawhi left for nothing. You end up losing Fred VanVleet for nothing. You trade Kyle Lowry for pennies on the dollar.
Nothing. Yeah.
You got Precious Achiuwa, and now basically Precious is only there to be a meme with him and Grady Dick. So, it's I like Precious Achiuwa. I think he's a fine player. I think he's got a lot of interesting upside to him. But at this point, what is it, year 3 for him now? He's kind of in that Isaiah Jackson boat where he's got to have to prove himself and maybe get a bigger role this year. We'll see. But I haven't really liked the way they've gone about trying to figure things out. So they did trade Norman Powell for Gary Trent Jr. Norman Powell, I think, was a really good player for him. So
he was.
I don't know if Gary Trent Jr. was much of a upgrade or a drop off. I feel like it was kind of an even trade. So nothing there to really make me feel like, oh, bad move. But I don't know. Toronto's just interesting. I just feel like there's teams out there that have regressed in the Eastern Conference, and the Pacers should feel good about where they're going because they're ascending while teams are descending. And that's the main thing here. It's we got to just slowly keep passing them as teams are coming down. We're coming up right above them. And I think that's ultimately the best part about this. But I don't think they need to rush. I think that we've talked about this, like the Pascal trade, the other stuff like that. While it does make sense and while we can justify it, like a Drew trade, the smartest thing to do with this Pacers team right now is to continue letting these guys figure it out on their own. Don't blow up the roster. Keep the young core intact. Let them learn together and grow together because that's what we loved about that Roy Hibbert team. Yeah, you brought in a vet like a David West, but you didn't gut your roster to go out there and make a move for the hottest name on the trade market. No, you built within Roy Hibbert, Lance Stevenson, Paul George. You traded for George Hill, but really he was growing up here basically. I think he got traded in year 2 or 3. So that's the case. And then Danny Granger was a part of this core. Other pieces were part of this core that we drafted. So, yeah, just let your young guys figure it out and let the ascension just continue happening as we grow internally.
I know some people are going to roll their eyes, but there's a lot of GMs that would love to inherit the situation that the Pacers have right now with the young team, in specific Tyrese Halliburton, who I think around the league is being looked at as a star in the making. Obviously, you got your Bennedict Mathurins, your Andrew Nemhards, your Myles Turner. There's a little bit of, you got the youth, you got the experienced, you got your draft picks. The financial flexibility right now is ridiculous to the point where don't just push your chips all in just to have a short-term fix. Let's play this out, because there is a scenario where the Pacers just make the playoffs. They could show enough promise for someone to say, I'm the missing ingredient over there. Mm-hmm. I'm the guy that can get this team to the next level. The Pacers have the assets to either go out and make that trade or be real players in free agency. And we saw it last year. The way the Pacers were able to get Bruce Brown is because they simply had more cap space than anyone else. Really, they were the team that could be serious and outbid people that only had that mid-level. Pacers have set themselves up to be big players this offseason. We'll see what happens with some of the expiring contracts or anything like that. They could, make some moves at deadline. Whatever it is, this is not the closing of the window of, if it's not this year, we got to blow it up type of scenario. Right. We're just getting started.
Yeah, this feels like the year the Pacers made the 8th seed with Frank Vogel.
Oh, and that was a great time.
Yeah, and this is kind of what this year feels like to me a little bit. It's like, yeah, the coaching staff's the same and the roster's pretty much intact, but if they can make the playoffs and they can show like, hey, we've got something special here in terms of like how we're growing, there could be a free agent like a David West that's like sees Indiana as like a real spot to maybe go on a couple Eastern Conference final runs, because like if we don't get David West, we don't make that jump as a team.
No chance. None.
Yeah.
He changed the culture.
He was the glue.
Yeah.
He was the glue that held that team down, and he was the guy that made all the big shots. Now, you might not need someone to do all of that for you, but if there's an attractive free agent, let's just throw it out there. OJ Anunoby sees the Pacers make the playoffs as an 8 seed, and he's like, I feel like I can really help this team. I want to go there. Then the Pacers are going to be able to do that because they do have the flexibility in the offseason to go out and get him. We've already talked about it. They are going to have cap space again next year, even with Tyrese's extension kicking in. So that's why, you hear about Aaron Nesmith, Buddy Hield, Obi Toppin, like all these extension talks that could happen haven't really started yet, I don't think, or they haven't really been public because the Pacers got to keep their flexibility open. I mean, they asked Chad about that, and Chad's like, look, we've never even seen Obi play a game here for us. While we're excited about the move, we got to see what he looks like before we start giving out money. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I think that the Pacers are in a great spot financially. They're in a great spot team building wise. And if you're a Pacer fan, you should be excited about what's happening this season.
Yeah, this isn't, not paying your franchise player who's now threatening to hold out. This is we can afford to wait on guys that have not entered restricted free agency yet. We're going to be all right. And they understand that because they're still young enough in their careers. So this isn't some, bad blood going into training camp or anything. Keep your options open because we want to dream a little bit bigger than just running it back with this unit. And you know what? Maybe Obi Toppin plays so good that, hey, his price tag went up. I'm willing to live with that. I think so are you. I think so is the front office.
Yeah.
Aaron Nesmith, same thing could happen over there. But at the same point, that's a good problem because then that means that these guys got better and that they're worth keeping around long term. And for that, I'm willing to roll the dice.
Right there with you, Foch. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Tell the people where they can find us at on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Twitter at SettingThePace3. You can find Alex on Twitter at AlexGoldenNBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at Pacers Talk. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, go to youtube.com/Setting the Pace, a Pacers podcast, where you can find all of our video content like this episode here, where we will have this up on YouTube for you guys. But with that being said, Facci, if you are excited to see the team camaraderie and the competitive training camp continue, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!